Hello, dear Maria Bartiromo, Fox News, and President slash Chief Trump. No, you're almost done with your time with that. In other words, and every president, every chief, since before America's founders were born, then to have presidents distinct from that, no, non-distinct, but also distinct from it, and that distinction is worse than obfuscated. Others being and has been communicated for our founders behind and as James Madison and his plan, and how they went and then got George Washington to agree to use that plan and to counter extort to force the other third of America's founders. All three thirds of America's founders are Native American, and then coupled with, grouped with our colonial founders behind James and as James Madison and his plan. That's why I see president slash chief communicates this, for example, as nature itself does. But we have even the communications of James Madison replaced, and that being having been self-value, and rolls with it, and with the exceptions to it, are standing used as a sensory for the breaching method, as a scientific value with other things others are self-blamed, right? Where that's the scientific value. It's one of the things true always that with witch trials are about, regardless if they were made up. You don't leave out, one is not supposed to leave out the other simultaneous laws against everyone sickly distinctly. If anyone would mention anything, how sickly non-distinctly, it's recorded that that was against the law too. Because the law was not law by nature. It was is abridged and pretending other or being sensed or sensing for the breaching method. That is not countries A through Z, but it was entrenched through the foundings of countries A through Z, the same exact way, distinctly but non-distinctly too, from how it was entrenched in America with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, even though that goes against the Constitution unabridged. And hyper additionally, what, where, and how, and why. We have rights that are too numerous to have to list. And where and how and why, hyper additionally. Communications was and is simultaneously greater than and more finite than, and with active relativity to what is said. Why is it's valuable, why is more? In other words. So it's important. One of the things that is distinctly against every human body of the species body is that there are styles of identity, theft, fraud, slanders relative to their appreciation of what nature communicates to us. Like where and how its body, hyper invisible but still discernible, is showing us that it, to an extent we could discern, it comes with its complete complete identity relation to itself, and the only increasing value of that, which is what we are being shown. Where and how we have eyes distinct from the fish have two eyes that look so much human, because they're distinct but non-distinct and simultaneous. But again, put that further, hyper simultaneous. The same body that has us shown that we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. And there are exceptions. And where we have the same color eyes, those colors, plural, are white and black, coupled. And in other words, nature's identity has a distinct value, one way more for each number, each difference, each letter. But because of that, they equally gain the value of the rest of the numbers and letters relative to the identity the sciences share. It shows us that how and why boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped, and they're about fighting, but fighting by the rules. But the rules have been abridged since semi-ancient times. This is one of the things that we have to appreciate if we want to appreciate properly and completely as science proper. How we have black pupils, whites of eyes, how this was left out, even though there are so many things being communicated with it. In other words, at the same time, and how that's relative to how it demonstrates when there are systems abridged, as they are at countries A through Z. See, it's one thing to the nature of debate regarding economies. If you pay attention, that nature of debate wasn't criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, or all. The nature of debate would have not quashed out and changed what people said proper about how, for example, nature itself shows us and our founders communicated the economy and economic narratives by that was his collusion slash S with the difference between the guilt as the court's names, like with witch trials, even if it was made up, or don't forget all those other crazy laws against everyone, and don't forget even black slavery, slavery against black northern colonies and southern colonies was entrenched. So a whole bunch of victims slash hyper victims are trained to pretend it's about a T tax and use that truth as collusion slash S to maintain the scientific value of the human fact tribute nature breaching method by nature itself and by our founders, replaced from their communications and what was declassified. What we know, just from the fact that there was slavery entrenched, but we also know there were sick, crazy laws against everyone roles entertained with fact tribute nature collusion slash S against the rest of humanity to an extent. Otherwise, that body was discerned, including if that body was a majority of people, including if that body was everybody, all locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species body stands. Already had from off the campuses Marcius and exceptions, influences with that associated with the human syntax nature. Us as that as identities, values, plus variables, we focus on how we are syntax nature, therefore function. It was forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded to use the exceptions in exception nature, tactical ulterior from how nature does. The same identity that shows boxing, martial arts, and wrestling group. It shows the predicate value to the as a hyper additional name for a verb. So we could see that every identity, even if is made up, it's complete identity. The identity of all space slash existence. Everything is a semi-nature relationship to itself. It has the difference between the smallest finite details and or the order of the finite, and or the order of what is active are grouped in order of progressive per its definition. Like, for example, showing us the value of seasons before they come here. But see, now we are through systems tactile ulterior from its own. The one that shows us there are other species bodies. They have qualities, aspects in nature, distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous slash hyper-simultaneous. They are individual species bodies of individuals with all group differences and demonstration of that generating more and more of its complete identity as the complete identity of all space slash existence, also distinctly as itself, as space and as existence, and as you are yourself. So to discern this as you are with yourself with black pupils, white eyes. It means to discern the teachers you loved. They're a certain type of victim slash hyper victim who had other things, others themselves. In other words, everyone's had each of the sciences. So we ignore this. And there are people from off campuses originally and still that were shown means and deeds to exploit that. And where and how American history has nature itself and has our founders communicated for us to understand the difference between who was worse with the guilt roles at all locations, at all natures of crime scenes. Because all natures of crime scenes wouldn't have been had there not been internationally monitored conversations, themselves monitored through international companies and countries, themselves already having been the possession slash hyper possession, self-valued, not even discerning how it could be exploited by the breaching method that came from the before modern religious messengers that couldn't leave a scientific record, but they're all about the science. So they had to put it with cipher. Well, like, for example, right at the beginning of the Old Testament, it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's before the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. No. See, everyone wants to defend the book out of sequence and with value treatments. Also tactically delusions wrought. And then needing to fake and change what they believe they hear or what is said. And or two, simultaneously self-valuing roles at each age of campus and nature of campuses with differences rackets. The differences racketeering worse than war crimes is one of the things that is self-value roles. Otherwise, that body is sensed. Because note that we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, projected to us by the identity of space slash existence. Anyone who denies that has inherent to active to and progressive to their logic and their nature. The demonstrations are the same thing. Demonstration slash S of the same thing. All plural things are being generated by the identity of value slash value progression that is making more of its body of forever nature through temporary slash lasting space nature, and nature being a hyper additional word. Just like we need, for the same reason, we need more than one word for a verb. We need nature as a word for identity, because the identity of all space slash existence, we can't discern its complete identity, but its complete identity is inseparable from all things, even things made up its way, as the order, as the difference between, well, as the order of the finite or the finite details. It is coming to, from, as, with, and for all things, as its identity to the extent we could discern. Its identity, which comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself and the value of that equally. Increasing as value, where all things are only equally increasing as value, and it's equal to all parts of its space. It has a unchanged identity of relativity, all that is positive and negative. But then there is a temporary slash lasting exception as value, as identity value slash value progression, where Earth is, and where we are Earth, but distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously. But now hyper simultaneously through abridged human fact treatment nature systems, human species volumes system, relativity to short words, like with words, uses of power, the nature of the debate regarding such uses of such words. Power is about relativity, and like relativity to positive and negative simultaneously is each identity is, while being a quality of fact should be nature further, positive or negative. But we have to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. Because we have been systems taxability from its own. And exceptions in exception nature are having been valued um fake, even when real used to hide the fake roles with that. The breaching method propagated all kinds of roles, needs, and natures with its method that measures and maintains people only capable of self valuing and needing to blame other things, others, or selves. Right where the human fact should be nature breaching method is an answer. Other things, others, or selves is an answer that force blamed instead. Also relative to where and to how and to why everyone gets away with leaving the significance of this out. Sickly distinctly at all locations, because that's one of the things. We all have collusions without realizing. The breaching method's use of location slash S, and it knew that nature itself would continually demonstrate. A human fact should be nature breaching method is sickly non-distinctly against every single person. And you knew that would demonstrate that to the group countries still. So it measures and maintains effectively pulled off the World Trade Center attack. Increasingly, people involved with Weathersfield Police, with a whole bunch of different police departments and campuses and retired police chiefs. They have roles inter-services, foreign and domestic military. They have roles with falsified police reports, wire crime acts and methods. And with the same house slash S involved with them, with all sides of criminal and civil cases. And with names at the World Trade Center attack, next to the spots next to it, including the spot next to it as the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan, which was involved itself with changing the date on legal papers. And all sides of that case are names that were brought up involved with predicate acts against me, inter-campuses and intra-campuses, inter-cities, and intra-cities through time. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University and New Britain, Connecticut has roles with people that planted evidences on all sides of my house when I was a kid and then as an adult. And sequence shifts. And increasingly, kids and adults recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Joseph Aiello, he has sisters, and there's a Christopher Cullen, who have roles with and a whole bunch of other people involved with state police and Central Connecticut State University and other, all the campuses, and they lie about why you have to bring up names, because the interbranch have been forging and switching names and refusing to get on paper. Increasingly, there are judges and prosecutors and their family members who have time collusions with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions, who have roles of predicate acts with facts, where predicate acts with facts methods. I'm not even a lawyer. A Trantolo and other lawyers associated with WFSB are involved with them with intercampuses, including medical and fire campuses. And they have roles with a principal upskirt nature and more with the name Leahy, involved with a Brian Silver and a Judge Smith and a Judge Killian, involved with some sexual medical offenders and their roles with untimely deaths and putting fake medical information in people's databases, and roles with use/s of all natures of investigations, investigators remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions are off, but way worse because all that was used remotely too by the hyper foreign and their roles with the whole bunch of names and their families at and next to the colleges and universities, intercities and intra-cities, with the same ones involved with the wire crimes of the Wethersfield police. As times collusion/s with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in all the countries and the names you guys bring up. They have the word overt criminal enterprises, plural, next to Hartford Hospital with Mayano family that lives there, per John Mayano, and where he lives now, where he's been. And his roles with all kinds of next to Hartford Hospital, with Aiello and Tomorrow's Market and Aiello's Kitchen through time, which is also next to Buckley High School. Involved with sequence shifts, fake ties, fake natures of ties between people, acting for other people to record illusions and fake exceptions, as their roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases and news at the same time, overt criminal enterprises at the same private time, and terrorists. These are also names involved with the Saudis, with people with the name Mendez at the Wethersfield Police Department. Faked conversation with me. I said a sentence to my friend from Saudi Arabia, and she repeated confessions about it tied to it. I didn't tell her it was a confession of others. But in other words, a Joe DeMoro has rules with people named Scalora, and there's a Claudia Scalora. They're one of the ones at the World Trade Center and spots next to it and the court next to it. Both sides of the case in the court involved with sequence shifts, but also attached to fake words and ties to other and fake changed communications with others. And the news at the same time to prevent the right outcome/s at all locations/s. Increasingly, people from my grammar school had roles of body dumping spots that kept getting brought up. And this is various ways recorded. The breaching method showed the prosecutors and judges they need to hide what they really think about what's recorded on social media, because a lot of things were confirmed on social media that they had to hide, and they had to make it look for like it was for other reasons. So they used the right to lie, to use a phrase of James Comey, recorded involved with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and co-defendants of his, with the branches of government individually grouped and together, also used remotely. The Act countries A through Z, though, because there's a hyper foreign that showed them how to think, how to speak, how to blame. Because which is important, because it blame other things, others ourselves are blamed, right where nature itself tells us, look, it's one of the things true always that all those laws were about. Nature doesn't use words, but if we search what was the sum value of those crazy laws against everyone sickly distinctly, if they're black or white, and then look how many different types of white there are and different types of black. And everyone goes to Africa. Well, how come everyone leaves out the rules of Africa with that before America's founders were even born? It was entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. They have everyone collusion here and there, right through our own, blaming our other things, others ourselves, at each age of fact cheap nation too. Hands them the motives. They were trying to see if they were doing homework. Then, in other words, you guys have replaced what our founders communicated. In other words. And then there was then there were presidents. And then even when he became a president, additionally, James Madison, before he was our president, he was our founder. That's how we were directed. That's how I read we were directed to refer to him singular as our founder. But also the president slash chief and nature itself shows us that there had to be Native Americans behind that. Because how could, besides the fact there was one way, in other words, to an extent, the laws were fact, human nature, torture, extortion, and slavery against every single person, northern colonies, southern colonies. And that was causing negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. But as the breaching method knew, it wouldn't, did, and does through time. And then when people are adapting to it, it makes you, it's perfected since before modern religious messengers were born. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the names of the people of the sciences to hyper additional collusions with itself. And so then when nature would demonstrate that and other things with itself, all these hyper additional motivations, nature needs, styles of identity, theft, fraud, slanders roles, like with the black pupils, whites of eyes, denial of the value of the significance of it. This is means hyper evidentially recorded to show that we have been systems abridged, tactical ulterior from nature's hyper native pure. And so the nature debate still contains quality aspects of nature that are standing, sensory positions for the breaching method. That did the same thing against their countries. There are proofs. I don't even know Mao Zedong, but it's recorded that countries A through Z have left out and have replaced the scientific value of what we should refer to as hyper criminally foreign influence, criminal insidiousness, positive treatments and negative treatments, and or identity, therefore name treatments. All exceptions in exception nature, they come with demonstrations of had the breaching method been addressed or discerned, because it is recorded, a singular method use that is still making use of the different, like people make a subject treatment on witch trials, leaving out what's hyper evidentially recorded, leaving out the hyper archaeological, because archaeological evidence is treatments. Natures have relied on other, like law names. All sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, their sources, their family members, their neighbors, the same thing with all sides of the cases and the crime scenes. And the same thing with the courts. They're putting the same sequence shifts at the same time. They're putting the same collusion /S at the same time. How this is gotten away with is recorded, how they're building upon predicate acts into databases and the differences of guilt of the people there, worst relative to where and to how people need to speak about that. Because we have only an extent of the means to discern it. But we have the complete means we need. But it requires addressing how from off campuses, federal and state too, the differences between federal definitions and acceptations and as is, in other words, or states' rights and acceptations of that. The difference of that too was it used criminally foreign influence with estimation of reality, let alone of reality and what is hyper addition, which morality law and all these things are supposed to be about. This breaching method measures and maintains DEI, the narratives, natures, and counters to it. Collusion /S, self-value. Forced to be self-value because the nature of debate, there are people who will speak for the difference of Democrats or the difference of Republicans as locations, areas, and states. only to force the leaders to entertain locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects, nature, all as collusion/S, and with their motivations, narratives, like relative to where and to how. I've been asking you guys every year before the World Trade Center attack, more and more, after the World Trade Center attack, WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them, fake locations with them and with others about the World Trade Center attack, while Interbranch switched and forged names in sequence and planted evidences in their databases with names involved on all sides. There are all kinds of natures of criminally foreign influence uses of the World Trade Center and of the names of the people of the sciences. Forgiveness is because they're changing and faking what people say. They're getting away with this. I recorded how. Fake branches bow and fall, but there is seed. Begin, proceed, please follow mandated laws. So, in other words, they have Russians in Ukraine involved with psychiatry, with foreign and domestic military, and names that next to campuses through time involved, with retired Weathersfield police chiefs involved with names professionally and criminally, and personally involved with them with all sides of criminal and civil cases, involved with predicate acts against everyone, but also against me. And I'm only allowed to speak against me. But I'm not. I'm not going to leave out, however, against everyone else too. But I'm only allowed to speak for me. So we need to get them on paper, one name in sequence. I can't get one person to help me from before the World Trade Center attack. The courts and the FBI and the state police families and foreign and domestic military police forms. They were at West Hartford locations and I don't know, Central Connecticut State University, involved with Dean Judd and his kid. Per them, you can't lie about such. And Saudis, they forced the collusions with them with people from Weathersfield. They don't even know the extent of it themselves because have been using remotely criminally foreign influence tactically delusions wrong. Let me show you apart all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it. There's a Justin Kolvinskis. I never had a class with him. I never saw him on a campus in my life. One time there was a quick exception. They try to make a quick exception with people I don't know at all, too. There were no exceptions, like a Joshua Julian, who's on the Facebook page of the principal upskirt nature, who I recorded involved with more predicate acts with them. Also with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. And with more upskirt pictures after on Twitter, too, after the principal upskirt nature was already put in jail. The same ones that had forced that originally still. You have a bunch of fake tough guys with New Britain Superior Court. And the women they lied to there about me since I was a kid. All true, they've been planting evidences out and fake ties, fake natures of ties. Then this breaching method shows them they have to do things to hide how they use all natures of investigations, investigators, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. A Perone family, kids and adults, and a Kerr family, kids and adults. They have collusion at the corner of Southstein Highway and Two Route Highway with foreign and domestic families that also and people that work for them. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with wire crime acts and methods with them. Falsified police reports with judges and prosecutors and educators putting fake things in databases and as collusions at and next to crime scenes with screening foreign bodies, criminal enterprises, private ones, with grammar school kids and middle school kids involved with identities. There are frauds with them, slanders with them, news at the same exact time, collusion/S, and with motivations narratives. That's why they're interbranch forging and switching names. New Britain Superior Court, they confessed they were influenced to switch names, pretend it was a mistake or what. In other words, and then make people listen, and then put them in fake conversation. Never got a word to talk. They're stacking also confessions that they're threatening me not to report as collusion/S and recorded evidences that through time, Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, has rules of predicate acts with a whole bunch of people on all sides of my house and at other campuses next to them, and with a whole bunch of different countries and criminal enterprises with their extended family members, all along roads and routes, Route 3 too. A whole bunch of people tied to a Mike Pandolf, a whole bunch of people tied to a Ray Kalal, a Joe DeMauro, a Mike Kerr, a Jerry Kerr, more than one Jerry Kerr. These are also people on Facebook page of the principal child abuser with a Joshua Julian with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, identity theft, fraud, slanders roles, planting evidences. I don't even know all their names. They're putting sequence shifts too through time. Your roles with use of their own differences or other people's differences. Increasingly, educators. There's I don't know his name. I'm referring to black because they're playing that game with black people. I don't know their name that went to my campuses that put fake things with the FBI and the courts and the Weathersfield police with the ones with the Hartford police, Rocky Hill police families, are the same ones wire crimes with them on my street, predicate acts with them, with a whole bunch of people from other areas. Like a Joshua Julian who brought up untimely death rolls to me. I mean, like not Joshua Julian. Joshua Julian was on the same time one of the ones involved with the principal's campus. Robert Rodriguez brought that campus up to me, though. See, they have been changing and faking what's digitally recorded. They have been playing sick, organized crimes with overt criminal enterprises, private ones with the interbranch, who are KKK theme, black theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, and using that difference and you have it with the audacity to use other people's names. To have one case come before them. In other words, black pupils, it is time. So please, Maria Bartiromo, next to Fox Connecticut News, the intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have people named Mendez and Domain involved with more sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with their roles with Jewish themed, with people with the name Riley involved with the Board of Education, and criminal enterprises involved with mayors next to the Board of Education. Has something to do with their side entrances to parks, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold and his daughter involved with my sixth grade class, fifth grade class, fourth grade class from other rooms and putting fake things in databases. Third grade class increasingly with a former as collusions with a Tim O'Brien and Andrew O'Brien and the intelligence community, all kinds of wire crime acts and methods. They use the right to lie where they don't, and they put allusions through also with people with the name D. Simone, recorded involved with the Newington intelligence families and locations, intercities, and Glastonbury, with the ones planting predicate acts on my street, and with Whiting Forensics through time. Whiting Forensics has a whole bunch of roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people tied to a former Mayor Gold who have roles with them with federal evidences, crimes on my street, and with the campuses, and with names that who have ties between each of the who are next to each of the campuses I went. And they have timed identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake exceptions planting of tying or knowing me roles and use of that roles, use/S of that roles. That's what's actually recorded. So please, WFSB put me in fake Connecticut's Channel 3 News put me in fake conversations with them as recorded proofs of their roles intercities before the World Trade Center attack with people who are in the attack context and since. They also have more Saudis I don't know the names of involved with WFSB and people involved with the name Scalora and a bunch of people that reportedly were her boyfriends of a Claudia Scalora and their roles in West Farms Mall and a park near there involved with a Joseph Dennis also with various natures of organized crimes with kids and with adults, and identity theft, fraud, slanders instances roles with his former mayor Gold and his educators. I never had a class with Joe Dennis. They try to put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Has something to do with his roles with John Dennis. So, in other words, his family involved with the intelligence community along Route 175. It's proof that it was just a victim slash hyper victim, victim predator, hyper predator, per his rules with the FBI, Director Robert Luskin, and judges and prosecutors, and the mayors and people involved with that, with West Hartford locations before and after the World Trade Center attack. After the World Trade Center attack, this is right through administrations too. They're showing fake transcripts. They're putting fake transcripts in databases. These are also people out there at next to the state corrections offices, and next to with the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with collusion slash S with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences at locations and next to crime scenes with names of collusions with them, as ones on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the courts and the prisons' names at the same time with their family members at and next to body dumping spots and other natures of organized crimes and things that they brought up at once. These are whole. They also have a crime method slash S on a mass scale where they pretend that people had conversations with them, and in those conversations they pretend that everyone was evil, and they do that knowing that the police forms in many ways are only capable of using the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie, while being and having been tactically delusions wrought. See, we have to heal the names of the people of the sciences' names. We have to get them to follow mandated law on paper properly. So increasingly, Sandy Hook has a prison involved with a whole bunch of people at the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices and the state forensics with Whiting Forensics in Middletown is increasingly involved with a Bob Chase and a Phil Cololo. Increasingly involved. I never had a class with a Phil Cololo. Never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life. Saw him one time from a distance on the outside of a campus being handed a gold watch by one of the principals who was told lies to me. Also with some black KKK Confederate flag things, etc. And with the family members of judges and prosecutors involved planting evidences with Phil Cololo, involved with criminally foreign influence, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and predicate acts and databases. In other words, so when we have to get them on paper, one name in sequence. There's also an Anthony Agnew who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed there are people with the name Leahy and a Dr. Dingleberry or Dewberry as ones involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes with them, with foreign and domestic, and with my algebra teacher involved with them, and some the security of the schools through the time. That rolls all kinds of wire mail crimes and people at Hartford hospitals and campus of Institute of Living. A whole bunch of people tied to an Anthony Agnew involved with these Mendez police, intercities, and next to Fox Connecticut News, next to WFSB, next to WTNH. Then they want to pretend they have integrity by these agencies' names. The differences of their guilt was used criminally for influence too. Them pretending they don't realize how they're using blind collusion. Then they're going to speak about power. In other words, as criminal insidious natures. You have to follow mandated law. They've been putting predicate acts at each campus, keeping the branches of government, wire crime acts and methods, natures, needs, styles. In the form, too, of fake phone transcripts with the police. As police that put me in fake conversations with them at the Wethersfield Police Department when I was a kid, now as an adult, too. Sickly distinctly, too. Little trick fake punks with like little magic tricks that we're going to start paying attention to, black people. It is time. Arise, who disbelieves. Please. WTNH also has sources along Route 175 in its conjunctions recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved also with predicate acts next to campuses, and their roles with the judges, prosecutors, and their family members. With the judge, with recorded how the branches are and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, individually grouped to that, used that way, grouped to, and then together to measure and maintain styles, needs, and nature incapable of affording short words proper with convictions, let alone convictions with guilt, but less that protracts vaccines, black pupils. Leave not this apart. So please, I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center as an observer. Increasingly, people from WFSB, the news locations, and people involved with the public television, with Russians in Ukraine and their doctors. Harvard Hospital has intelligence involved with Ukraine and Russia, and with this Fred Grisey. And people next to the campus is involved with planting identity theft, fraud, slander, federal evidence as crimes. Increasingly, in other words, with the people that work at the campuses too, criminally foreign influence roles with those criminal enterprises, private ones, and not legitimate. Also, that's just really because the agencies have. It's not legitimate. They confess that too. In other words, a whole bunch of people tied to Fred Grisey that I never had classes with. I even went to a school with him. He's involved with planting evidences at each of the campuses I went to, with people involved with planting identity theft, fraud, slanders with people from other areas on my street, including ones that strangers that sought me out to make confessions, like this Fred Grisey. And I recorded them trying to pretend other with him at my campus I did go to. In other words, and they hid that. They should not have hid the things with the gun too. In other words, when Tony DeMauro called the police because I cocked the gun inside the house, they should not have hid that from my parents. Those are the same ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. Wethersfield Police. Heather Hansen also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with Joe DeMauro too. Their roles with planting evidences with different people with three, like along Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Also with judges and prosecutors recorded with predicate acts with people there. And people at Harvard Hospital attaching people to fake transcripts, fake ties to strangers, a whole bunch of different countries. Joe DeMauro said he has a cousin in Thailand, and they both went out with Heather Hansen. And he had a friend that went out with him, but they were they wanted to pretend they were fighting or something at the same time with Heather Hansen. I don't even know. They were just making a fake. They brought me there, and they told me that. In other words, and then they're pretending I know them. They try to make fake exceptions of knowing people. And increasingly, the interbranch has been using Facebook to fake and change what actually recorded and confirmed. On Facebook, it is recorded other like their rules with use/s of totally different body dumping spots and murders intercities that have connections. They've been making people raise their voice on a mass scale, consciously, where they have problems with domestic, where there are real impositions upon police. The corruption and the criminally foreign influence use/s of the corruption that's denied because it was involved with way worse. So even when they get caught, they know there's way worse and they don't know about that. They're changing it. They have to keep it on the predicate acts where they take us to fake conversations with themselves. Intercities with the same names. On off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state corrections offices. Increasingly, people on off the state judicial branch offices have roles of the World Trade Center attack with foreign and domestic military, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. with the interbranch and the differences of their service number. Get down, get them on paper, one name in sequence. In other words, watch. I'll show you what to do. Ugh.